it's an overhaul of the system that administers it. That is blowing out at $3 billion a year.
Yes, it is. It's very significant, and one of the recommendations is that we talk about is a overhaul of the information and communications technology within Department of Human Services.
Now, you also say that new unemployment payments should be adequate enough to be to afford a basic acceptable standard of living. Do you think that the current system does? Because many people say New Start, for instance, isn't enough to live on and should be lifted.
Well, it would be extremely difficult to live on that level of payment. There's no doubt about it. But in what we're proposing, many people will be better off than in the current system, because we are advocating a supported living pension, which would take the place of a disability support pension, but we're also proposing a working age payment with an upper, a middle and a foundation tier. And many people that are currently on New Start would be either on the upper or the middle tier. So it would mean that they'd be significantly better off and very closer to the supported living pension level.
Presumably this whole exercise of any government is to not just provide an adequate welfare system, but to do it in a more efficient and cheaper way. How much money is going to be saved, do you think, by doing this?
There will be significant savings over time and on two fronts. One is that there will be less people going on to a supported living pension. But in addition, we are proposing an investment approach. And what that involves is targeting support services to people most at risk of remaining in income support for a lifetime. So it could be young people leaving foster care, it might be mature age workers, it could be people with disabilities. But those services are directed to get them into education, training or a job. And New Zealand has adopted a similar approach. It's meant more people getting into jobs, and there's been significant savings over time. So we would expect it would be much the same. So early investment with a view towards savings in the longer term.
On the disability support pension in particular, I mean, there are 800,000 or so on that at the moment. That figure is always rising. Are all of those people legitimate claimants?
Well, having worked with low-income people for most of my life, most people are genuine that are on income support. However, there are people that do abuse the system. I mean, it's difficult at times to avoid that. When you look at the disability support pension, 30% of people have psychological or psychiatric conditions. Now, many of these are episodic in nature. For example, it could be depression or anxiety. But when we've talked with experts in the field like Professor Pat McClure, they say a vocational rehabilitation approach is the best. So it might mean that an individual needs medication, needs counselling, but linking them to education, training and a job is very important. And that's what we're proposing, an income support system with an employment focus. We want incentives there for work, so that's why we're trying to break down the barriers to people not having that incentive to work.
You would need a lot of support from business for that approach, though, wouldn't you?
We would, and there are progressive businesses that realise the importance of a diverse workforce. And if you take, for instance, people with disabilities, they rate very highly in terms of job performance, attendance, workplace health and safety issues. But what we're proposing is a jobs plan for people with disabilities and mental health conditions. And some of the elements of that are bringing together leaders of business, of government, and also the disability sector to develop practical initiatives. We're looking at an awareness-raising campaign, government setting employment targets for their departments, so a range of initiatives under that jobs plan. And if that's successful, there's no reason it couldn't be rolled out for other disadvantaged groups.
What about young people who currently get the youth allowance? What provision is made for them? Because the reference group, your group, considers that income support shouldn't generally be available to young people under the age of 22 in their own right.
Well, 22, that figure came from Hilda evidence, which suggests that young people are staying at home much longer, and that 22 seemed the age of independence in terms of young people sort of leaving family and leaving their family of origin. But
so someone say who's 17 and currently gets New Start is not going to get
no.
in the future?
If a young person was living independently, obviously, if there are exceptions, they're living independently. For example, they could be homeless, could be a range of circumstances while they were. That they had to live independently and could show that they were living independently, then they would get access to the to the payment. But the 22 was the age that we've set for the child and family payment.
Okay, now you chaired a previous welfare assessment in 1999. Now that one was largely ignored, has to be said, by the Howard government. What gives you any confidence that this one won't be ignored by this government?
Well, it wasn't totally ignored. I mean, it led to welfare to work initiatives and quite a significant investment by the Howard government. But the one area that saddened me that they didn't take up was simplifying the system. So, look, I guess I'm a half full person, and what we're proposing now is a simpler system. And I think it's a very practical way forward, from 20 payments to 5 payments, and with an employment focus. So, I would really hope that this government, and certainly the Minister is extremely supportive, would simplify the system, but also introduce this investment approach, because we've tried to have an integrated approach to welfare reform across 4 pillars with an employment focus. So it's investing in people as well as simplifying the system.
What are the consequences if we don't do it?
Well, if we don't do it, it's just going to continue to increase. But what's worse is that you want people to be able to realise their potential, and potential often involves involvement in the community and work, education and training. And we know the benefits of work from a health perspective, from a financial perspective. It's better for family and relationships. It's better for children. So where we can create a system where there's a base payment that's available to people, but on top of that, it's easy for them to access work, available work, and we can match the skills of people with available jobs, then that's really the best outcome for them. And that's what we're proposing.